To me, PoSH policy and adherence to the statute is just the beginning of a journey, and it should be part of the overall culture of an organization.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Voice the SASHA PoSHcast, your go to podcast for all things posh. This is your host, Shweta Bhatt, and in this episode, I am very excited to be talking to Manu Srinivasan, an HR and leadership consultant and the founder of HR Marga. This month, we are focusing on the theme of role of leadership in PoSH. And some of the topics that we will be focusing on include PoSH as compliance and much more, letter of the law versus spirit of the law, responsibilities of employers and senior leadership in creating safe workplaces, and the benefits to the organization and employees of the same. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. Thank you so much, Manu, for agreeing to be featured on this podcast with us and for this conversation that we're about to have. I believe it's a much needed one. So we've received a bunch of questions from our team about, the role of senior leadership when it comes to PoSH, the role of employers, and how to make things better. So I'm going to just dive right in. And so the first question we have is around the area of policies. So um, there are different policies that organizations have. So the question is about how important is the PoSH policy of an organization in comparison to the other policies? Are they prioritized in a certain way, or is it all treated as the same? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. First of all, Shweta, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be associated with SASHA. I've known Kanti for about 7 years now, and I've been associated with almost all of you in the team. And I've always told her that she's had a wonderful, bright team, and it's a pleasure to have any conversation with any of you to
Thank
start
you.
with.
Thank you.
Then diving right in, as you said, uh, PoSH started off as a compliance, right? And it is a part of the policies now in any organization that needs to comply with the laws of the land. And there are policies, as you are aware, many of them are owned by HR. These policies, some of them are compliance oriented and some of them are organizational policies, right? With specific reference to PoSH, I think it is a bit of both. There is obviously the compliance angle, which needs to be taken care of. You need to set up the IC, you need to adhere to the requirements of the law, and you need to send your returns and train your employees and all those aspects that are associated with having the statute enabled in your organization. However, from a policy perspective, to me, PoSH policy and adherence to the statute is just the beginning of a journey. In most other statutory compliances, you set up the process, you do whatever it takes to comply, and then you're more or less done. It will run its course. There isn't much more thought or input that you need to add to that compliance issue. With PoSH, you're just starting on a journey of making your workplace a secure and more acceptable workplace for women and generally employees of both genders. And it should be part of the overall culture of an organization. And in a culture that is diverse, where you want to have the best talent available for the jobs that you have at hand, and you want your organization to be comfortable, happy, secure environment, then your journey starts with the implementation of the PoSH statute. So in that sense, it is different from the other policies. Many of the aspects of PoSH can also be part of the code of conduct of an organization in terms of building a respectful workplace. But from a policy perspective, the PoSH obviously has to you need to have a policy that adheres to the PoSH statute, but we have to look much beyond that. That is my understanding of how PoSH needs to be implemented in an organization.
I like the way that you explained basically what boils down to a letter of the law versus the spirit of the law kind of a
Right.
thing. The bare minimum would be the compliance, and then our journey just
Absolutely.
begins from there.
Begins there.
It's a great
Yeah,
way to put it.
absolutely.
We have already talked about how crucial spirit of the law is when it comes to PoSH, but some organizations do the basic compliance. They just look at the letter of the law, and then they stop, right? So if we are working with organizations like these, and there might be many reasons as to why they do so, there might be budgetary constraints, etc. What do you think motivates companies to look at PoSH beyond just legal compliance?
See, one of the things I think of here is that when you do the leadership training or the leadership connect, and I know that that is done before you actually jump into the implementation of PoSH, especially in the initial stages. I think in that knowledge transfer or information session, I think it's important to let people know what could be the ramifications of not considering the PoSH statute as a larger cultural phenomenon, right? And I think there is a distinct ROI on having a equitable or respectful workplace, because today talent is in such deficit. You have people, but to have talented people, and if we don't have a system that can attract 50% of the population, which are women, who can't attract them and keep them and retain them and help them grow within our system, then we're losing out a lot in terms of talent that can contribute, that can excel, that can build and grow organizations. So definitely there is that whole diversity management, ecosystem, which I believe is extremely beneficial for organizations.
So, what are some of the simple things that, I mean, of course, there are many, many things, but what are some of the, if you look at it from a best practices point of view, what are some of the simple things that leaders can do um, to go beyond compliance or to basically set up a safe workplace with respect to PoSH? And what role does the leader play in, creating an environment of safety, inclusion, zero tolerance, etc.?
Yeah, so one of the most powerful tools, of course, is communication. Use every forum, every opportunity to communicate how the organization is committed to being a respectful workplace, is committed to zero tolerance on any kind of harassment within the workplace. The other aspect would definitely be investment in training, especially leads and managers, and potential leadership on how to manage teams respectfully, because most of the at a very ground level, a lot of the complaints that we do see are against the managers. So and they may stem from a lot of issues that actually happen within teams. So investment in training of the leads and managers, investment in training of the organization at large on how to like you said, create a respectful workplace, on gender sensitivity. These are very important investments that a leader can do. I also believe that the leader must be a role model, and if the leader sets a certain expectation among his team and his direct reports, and they in turn do the same with their direct reports, it kind of percolates in the organization. If we see leaders as being respectful, understanding of team members, the needs of different genders, and helping them kind of assimilate in the organization, having a diverse second level, having people of both genders in leadership, in senior management. These are some of the things that communicate an organization's intent to have a diverse workforce. And once you have a diverse workforce, the respect element is kind of a part of that whole journey.
Absolutely. I want to talk about, resistance from leadership, specifically with respect to implementations of the recommendations of the committee. So legally, the recommendations of the committee are binding on the employer. But realistically speaking, I'm sure we have seen instances where they might change something or downplay something, or even um, increase the quantum of disciplinary action, let's say. Have you come across such instances? What do
Yes,
you think of
Shweta, I've experienced both ends of the spectrum. In some cases, when the accused is somebody who is fairly senior or very critical to the process, right? Critical to the organization, is somebody a lot of customer relationships or projects are dependent on. It becomes very difficult to convince the leadership. Although, like as chairperson of the IC, I was of a senior level myself, but it was very difficult to get acceptance on what the IC was recommending, even to the extent of rubbishing the process and saying that it was not run properly and it's not accurate. And uh, and the other part of the process is when the accused or the perpetrator, whatever, I'm not sure, respondent in this case, I think that's the right word, right? When the respondent is of a senior stature in the organization, in the industry as well, then what happens? We get the complaint by word of mouth. The complainant doesn't want to write it down. She doesn't want to put it in paper. She has witnesses. She has people who are willing to come and tell me that this is what happened. And, but they would want to hear from the leadership that their complaint will be kept confidential, that their complaint will not impact their jobs, their lives. I was in a situation once where I couldn't do that because our CEO in that case was not willing to give that kind of commitment, was not willing. And hence we couldn't get the complaint in writing at all. And it was the third time that a very senior leader got away with it because the complainant was anxious, afraid. Family was advising against putting that complaint in writing, didn't want to go through the repercussions, just asked her to leave. Right? And that's what happens in most of these cases. You lose the employee because they obviously can't stay there having gone through whatever they do and being uncomfortable in that ecosystem. But the other thing is they are very fearful of how not just their jobs in the current company, but their jobs in the industry at large, in their careers, get impacted. So I've had that reaction, and that was extremely frustrating because we had direct guidance from the board. Said, don't touch him. This evidence is not sufficient. How do you know he's not lying? All that kind of stuff. And even though we had solid evidence and we knew, and this is, like I said, a third time this was happening with a particular person, we still couldn't do anything about it. The other extreme is when in a leadership case, I have found that one particular narrative that I have where a leader went after an employee and made sure she could gather sufficient complaints against him. We do guide as a HR department. I do guide when somebody says I've had this experience. I do guide them that this is a case for the IC, please write it down. But you can't push them, you cannot force them. And once you apply that kind of pressure, and you're a leader and you're the CEO of an organization, the employee buckles under that pressure.
the workplace itself, the way workplace functions? How have you seen it evolve over the years? I mean, you've been in this field for many years now. So, have you seen certain things change?
Very rapidly changing. Yeah, it's changing very rapidly. One of the things that happen, one of the first changes that happened is that we've become very informal in the workplace. Right? We recruit both men and women, and they are in the same place. They are in the office for long hours. Uh, we insist that the environment be very collaborative, that people engage with each other. We create situations for engagement where people get to interact with each other a lot more comfortably and easily. Now, okay, so let's not go to the problems of that, but just to say that that is one of the changes that have happened. The other change that has happened is there are more women now in the workplace than they used to be. So if you look at the junior level intake, when we hire freshers especially, it's almost 50% or more women come into the workplace. But senior management still continues to be under 30%. Senior managers and delivery managers and heads and all of them are very few. And in leadership, it still continues to be 10% and lower. So while it has not changed at the top of the pyramid, we have a lot of women coming into the workforce, right? The other thing that has happened, I think one of the biggest changes is social media, right? The access of so much of information about an individual, where they go to eat, what kind of clothes they wear on the weekend, where do they go to have a drink, what are the kind of activities they have. There's so much of information that you wouldn't want to probably share in a professional environment, but is accessible by all, and leads to a lot of other complications. And we this whole pandemic has obviously made the situations a lot more now digital. We're not face to face with our team, so we're distanced, we're remote. So that's another huge change that has come to stay and will continue to stay. Even any kind of blended working that we have now will have a large part of our organization still being remote. So these are some of the changes, and they come with their own issues.
So, in closing, is there something that you would like to say?
Shweta, the only thing that I want to say is I personally have never believed that the PoSH is just a compliance. For me, it's one element of a larger system of looking at how the organization runs its diversity programs, how their cultures and values are about having an equitable workplace, respectful workplace, sensitive to gender and challenges that come along with it, right? And especially in the current world where we are remote, right? And the challenges that women are facing by having to work at home with childcare, children are not going to school, elder care, so many things, and not, being completely stressed out at the way, the whole work-life blend is happening, or the blur, what we speak about, the work-life blur is happening. So the whole sensitivity of the organization towards that is extremely important. And I'd like to just say that some of the things I'm doing with my organization, HR Marga, is trying to drive discussions, learning around having, how do you have a respectful workplace? How do we create gender sensitive environments? And definitely, try to communicate the aspects around gender diversity through mediums of art. We use a lot of theater and art-based techniques because we feel the messages go down a lot more easily. Plus, they could be a lot more fun. So I feel that the collaboration between compliance and running the process and building the environment, and then generally looking at looking at gender equality and gender sensitivity from a systemic perspective. What are the policies around it? How is your pay parity? How many women do you have at each level? And it could go beyond women, right? The diversity is much more, it goes beyond women. So how do we look at the entire ecosystem? What are the benefits that you derive from investing in these kind of systems and processes and policies? Is something that my organization is very keen on working on, and we've started working in that direction. So I'm sure we are like the add-on to something that you people do, and both are absolutely required in an organization to make sure that we leverage the talent that is available, and we look ahead. I mean, I don't think now skill or competence is a male or female thing. right? So I think we have people who are skilled and competent from both genders. And as an organization, the intent is to leverage that, because you never know where your next star, your next leader, your next high potential is going to come from. And if we don't give that opportunity in the system, we don't give it that respect, we will lose out as organizations.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much, Manu, for I think this very thoughtful conversation. I am taking away a lot of learnings and a lot of interesting points that I will be sitting with, and I'm sure our viewers are too. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Shweta. That was really, for me, it was very interesting speaking with you. As always, my interactions with SASHA have been wonderful. So thank you so much.
And that was our episode, dear viewers. What did you think of it? What questions are you left with? What do you want to tell us? Write to us at voice@sashaindia.com. We would love to hear from you. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our monthly newsletter, Voice of Sasha, on Substack. Until we meet again with a brand new theme, remember to take care of yourself and that prevention and protection lead to progress.